everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, This Story Ain't Over. So today I am coming to you with a big book recs video, and this is a special edition for quarantine, self-isolation, pandemic, whatever you want to call it. A lot of you have been asking for kind of book recs, and I know a lot of you are looking for things to read slash do while you're staying home. So that I would do a big book recommendation video and have specific recommendations for every kind of reader that I can think of. I obviously haven't included every single kind of person, but I think I have like 6 different types of readers that I can think of during kind of isolation. So I am recommending a couple books for each. Hopefully this will be helpful to you and you'll see something that you might want to pick up based on the type of reader you are or the type of person you are and the way you're feeling right now. Hopefully you are doing okay. We're all chugging along, trying to keep it together. So hopefully one of these books will help you kind of find some comfort. So let's get right in. So the first type of reader that I could think of is the type of reader who just wants to escape, who does not want to think about a world where there is a pandemic, who just wants to jump into some other place. So for that type of reader, I have 2 different book recs for 2 different types of escapist readers, and they are Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor and Warcross by Marie Lu. So this is a fantasy and this is a sci-fi, near future sci-fi. So this takes place in a completely different fantasy world. It follows our main character Laszlo Strange, who is this dreamer and a librarian. And he's always dreamed and heard stories of this lost city called Weep. And so when a delegation from that city comes to his town looking for experts and different people of different skills to come solve a problem in their city, he kind of jumps at the chance and goes off to this place that he's always dreamed of and realizes that it's not exactly the place that he has heard all these stories about. It's a lot different. This is a really wonderful, magical kind of book. It's a little bit on the longer side, so it's definitely something that you can kind of get lost in. It has wonderful characters, wonderful magical abilities, and just interesting things to it. I loved all of the kind of character relationships. It's very intense, and I definitely think Laini Taylor's writing is just so beautiful, and you can definitely get lost in it. So this is like one of my #1 recs if you just want a like wonderful fantasy to just get lost in. This is the one. And then my other recommendation for this type of reader is Warcross by Marie Lu, and the reason I'm bringing up this one is because personally for me, I love kind of fun books, ones that are kind of just a whirlwind and kind of feel like a movie to just sweep me up when I'm feeling down. And I definitely think this is kind of a feel-good book that you can get lost in. It has a wonderful romance. It's very much a game story as well. It follows our main character Amika Chen, who's this young girl kind of struggling with money in New York City. She hasn't been able to go to college. She doesn't have any parents around, and this is set in like the near future when the world has kind of been swept up by this virtual reality game called Warcross. It's developed from this technology called a Neuralink, which this young billionaire creator named Hideo Tanaka created, and he's the owner of this game. And the game is kind of like capture the flag. There's like 2 different teams and you go after like an artifact, and it can take place in like different worlds, and it gets like really interesting and amazing. And so when our main character Amika Chen kind of glitches herself into a championship game by accident, she gets contacted by the creator Hideo Tanaka, and he flies her out to Tokyo to help him find a hacker in the game. And so he kind of enrolls her as a wild card into the championship, and she, you know, joins a team, and she is infiltrating this celebrity landscape while also kind of falling for the creator. And this is just a wonderful book. I think it's definitely a really like fun, quick, fast read. It has just so many aspects that are unlike our real world at the moment, but it could definitely be our world in the future, I think. And there is no pandemics in this book, so I think it's awesome. You should definitely read it. On the flip side though, you might be a reader who is kind of feeling really anxious at this time, feeling really stressed, and you want to see yourself kind of represented in that way. You want to feel like someone else is feeling that way, and so you might want to pick up a book that has like some significant anxiety rep. And I think there's 2 books that really come to mind for me. One of them I actually picked up myself to kind of read through passages because I found it really kind of comforting. And so that book was Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This follows our main character Aza, who is struggling with OCD, and she's kind of struggling with this idea that she might not be real, that she's not the author of her own kind of destiny. And her OCD is just really apparent in this book, and this is a very kind of real representation because John Green does suffer from OCD as well. And there's also a little bit of a mystery in this. She along with her best friend are trying to solve this mystery of this missing billionaire, and she also starts to kind of fall for the son of that billionaire. But I think that is all kind of secondary to Aza's own journey, personal journey. This is also just really wonderfully written. It's my favorite of John Green's books, and it's definitely one of those books that I always go back to reread passages. Like if you see how many sticky notes I have here, like yeah, I love this book. There's just so many passages in this book that bring me a lot of joy, but also a lot of comfort. It's told in first person, so it's very personal in that way, and I definitely think it's one that you can turn to if you're feeling anxious. And then the other one is Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. This is another great book for anxiety rep. This follows our main character Eliza, who is this web comic drawer, writer, creator, and she has this huge series called Monster C that she wrote and developed and made that has like thousands and millions of followers and readers, and she's kind of become a celebrity in this landscape, but she is always hid behind her avatar and her alias, and she's never revealed herself to her fans because she kind of suffers from anxiety, and just the concept of revealing herself in that way is just very stressful. And then there's the added aspect of her being quite different from her family. They're all very extroverted people, and Eliza's not like that, and they don't understand her love of webcomics and, you know, what she does. And so when a new boy comes to her school named Wallace, who is a fan of Monster C and a lot of geeky, nerdy things like her, a romance kind of buds there, but he doesn't know that she's the creator of Monster C, and there's a bit of anxiety that kind of follows with that. But the thing I really loved about this book was experiencing Eliza's journey through this and her personal struggle with anxiety, and seeing that represented was just really wonderful. I love this book so very much. There's a really strong message of hope in this, and like Turtles All the Way Down, it has a lot of passages that I just really vibed with. So if you are feeling anxious, I definitely think this is a great one to pick up. All right, now depending on the person you are, this next type of reader might be you. And the next two books that I'm recommending are for the type of reader who wants to see a world that is suckier than ours right now. You just want to see something that is worse off than ours, so that it kind of gives you the comfort that we are not doing that bad. We're gonna make it through. Sometimes you just need that. The first one is The Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. This is a great fantasy paranormal type series. It's set in a adjacent version of our world, and in this version the horrible acts of human beings start to create monsters. So there are three types of monsters. There's the Corsai, which are like flesh-eating monsters. There are the Malachi, which are like blood-drinking monsters, so basically like vampires. And the third type are Sunai, which are like soul-eating monsters. So there are two main characters in this book. One is August Flynn, who is a Sunai, but he is like on the side of humans and he's trying to help them, and he's like a good-hearted monster. And then there's Kate Harker on the other side, who is a human, but she's kind of a monster hunter, but her father is kind of this criminal boss, and he's kind of exploiting the situation with the monsters. And so the both of them are from this city called Verity, and they're on the opposite sides of this conflict. The author Victoria Schwab kind of described it as Romeo and Juliet meets monsters minus the romance, and it's definitely like that. This world is so messed up, and it is just really interesting to read about. It's a little bit on the dark and scary side, but I think overall it's really interesting, and seeing these two characters who are very different from each other come together to work together is very, very cool. Definitely recommend. It is a duology, so you can continue on with the series after this one if you felt like it. But yeah, definitely a great recommendation, and definitely a world much more messed up than ours right now. And the other book slash series I would recommend of a world that's kind of more messed up than ours right now is the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. I'm holding up the second book, Golden Sun, because I don't have Red Rising with me right now, but I love this series. It is such an awesome series. It is definitely kind of crazy and messed up. The series is set like way far in the future, when humanity is kind of expanded into the other planets, far into the galaxy, and society has kind of stretched out into these colored castes. So the lowest level is the reds, and the highest are the golds. And the golds are kind of all rich and all beautiful and all genetically perfect and larger than life. And they're kind of ruling over top down, and the reds are the lowest. They're the minors. And our main character Darrow is a red, and he's a miner on Mars. And his life is kind of terrible. All the reds kind of live very short lives because of the way the society is kind of formed. And there's definitely a sense of kind of tyranny from the top down. And so Darrow at the beginning of the series is only 16, but all of the reds kind of get married young. And so when his wife is kind of hanged and killed for a bit of a political crime, he ends up getting wrapped up in some rebel activity and joins up with a rank of rebels. So he gets transformed into a gold to kind of infiltrate them as one of them, and ends up in this kind of competition similar to the Hunger Games, with a lot of killing and death and crazy stuff happening, and he's trying to destroy the society from the inside. This whole series is just really, really wild and really cutthroat and just ridiculously insane. It is definitely a world that is wildly messed up, and I think it's great for the type of reader who just needs to see something that is worse off than us right now. So yeah, definitely recommend. It is a great series, and for anyone who's just looking for a great sci-fi series as well, it's a good one. On the flip side, if you are the type of reader who kind of wants to see humanity coming together, working together, but also the flaws of humanity and the way that they can use those flaws for good, you might want to try and An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. This is another kind of sci-fi book. It is set in our world, adjacent to our world, and it's kind of like the movie Arrival, but funnier and more upbeat and a lot crazier, and involving YouTubers. Basically, this book follows our main character, April May, who stumbles out of her New York apartment one day and finds this giant sculpture thing, and she names it Carl because it looks like a Carl, and she posts a video about it on her YouTube channel. And the video kind of goes viral because these sculpture things called Carls have kind of appeared all over the world in different locations, and they seem to be of alien origin. And they all appeared at the same time on the same day, without anyone knowing. And so April May kind of gets thrust into stardom and fame, and she becomes kind of the expert authority on these Carls, and you see the way that fame kind of destroys her. But you're also seeing people around the world kind of come together to figure out what these Carls are and what they mean. And there's a bit of a mystery in this book involving the Carls and some dream stuff, and you are seeing large amounts of humanity kind of work together. And I can't really say more than that without spoiling the book. But this is a very kind of honest and well done book. It takes a really interesting look at people and humanity and their flaws, and this book is somehow like super funny but also really deep, and I think that's one of its charms. So yeah, it's one of those books that you kind of need to go into without knowing too much, but I definitely recommend it. All right, and then I have a quick rec for the type of reader who wants to feel inspired during this time. If you wanted to take this time to kind of do something creative, because that's just what you're leaning towards, even though you don't need to, you can take this time to be unproductive, that is totally fine. But if you wanted something inspirational, I definitely recommend For Everyone by Jason Reynolds. This is kind of a poem slash speech slash like motivational thing. It is kind of a call to action telling you that regardless of who you are, you have the power to do whatever you seek out and achieve the dreams that you are chasing. The back says, "This is for the courageous and everyone who wants to be." This is a really inspirational short little thing, and I found a lot of comfort in it. It's definitely the type of thing that you might want to read if you are like graduating or you are stepping into a new kind of stage in life and you don't know where you're going. This is definitely a book for that. And then the next type of reader that I have recommendations for is the type of reader who wants a fun, kind of whimsical, magical read. So not necessarily someone who wants to escape completely, but someone who wants a kind of feel-good type of escape. And the two books that I picked for this kind of reader are also books that you can reread and always find comfort in. So they're kind of like comforting, feel-good escape books, if that makes sense. So the first one that I have is Howl's Moving Castle by Dinah Wayne Jones. This is one of my all-time favorite books if you've been following my channel. I read it when I was 10 years old, and I've come back to it year after year and found a new kind of comfort in it. A lot of you might recognize the title from the movie, the Studio Ghibli movie. The movie is based off the book, but there are a lot of things that are kind of different, but I think both are wonderful and amazing and have wonderful value on their own. But I definitely recommend the book if you haven't read it before. It is whimsical and magical and so very funny, and also has a lovely romance between Howl and Sophie. And it's about this young woman in this kind of magical land. She is the oldest of 3 siblings. She has always kind of grown up thinking that her destiny is kind of set. She's just gonna have a unremarkable life. But when she gets cursed by the Wicked Witch of the Waste and becomes an old woman, she kind of leaves home to seek out her destiny and ends up becoming a cleaning lady in the castle of the wizard Howl. And so Sophie is this young woman in this old woman's body, living in this wizard's castle, meeting new people, going to different lands, and falling in love and learning to accept herself as she is. And it's just such a wonderful, whimsical, beautiful book, and I definitely recommend it. It's just one of my all-time favorites. I definitely think it's something that can give you comfort and make you feel good during this time. And then the other whimsical feel-good read that I have is The Afterlife of Holly Chase by Cynthia Hand. This is a Christmas Carol retelling, modern-day retelling, gender-bent version, and it's about this young girl named Holly Chase who has been kind of a Scrooge. She's been this horrible person for most of her life, and one Christmas when she's 16, she is about to die, and she's visited by these 3 ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, and she is told to kind of recount her ways and be a better person, and she doesn't do it. And so because she fails to recount her ways and be a better person, she dies, and she becomes one of these ghosts and helps this kind of organization of Christmas spirits change Scrooges into better people. But this year's Scrooge is a kind of cute boy that she may have feelings for, and things kind of get complicated, and it's honestly a fun, feel-good read. It's a bit magical, but it's also funny, and it's definitely a quick read as well. So yeah, feel good, fun read for the reader who wants something whimsical to get them by. Alright, and the last set of books that I have are for the type of reader who kind of want to lean into disaster and want some pandemic wrecks or plague or disease wrecks. This is not for everyone, which is why I put it at the end of the video. So if you are not about this, you can just kind of skip to the end. So I have 3 recommendations for this type of reader, but they're all kind of on the adventurous side rather than dark side, so they still might be okay for some of you, and they're all series as well. They're all YA series. First one is Legend by Marie Lu, part of the Legend series. This does involve a heavy element of a plague. The main character's family is infected by a plague and they are put in quarantine. And the main character, Day, breaks into a hospital to find a plague cure and ends up getting injured and involved in a kind of murder mystery that puts a soldier on his tail, and it involves kind of a romance but also a revolution aspect, and it is a kind of classic YA dystopian book. This one does have plagues in it. The next book is Cinder by Marissa Mayer. This also has a plague in it. It is a pretty big aspect in this book. I think the first scene in the book is the main character Cinder, who is a cyborg, and this is a Cinderella retelling. So she is in her market stall kind of working on her stuff. She does like repairs and things for like androids and stuff. So she's visited by the prince who needs to get his android fixed because there's like a message on there and there's like a mystery and it's like a whole thing. But in that very first scene, there's someone in the market across the street who has been infected by the plague and everyone finds out, and so the whole market shuts down to avoid the spread. So the plague is definitely a really big part of this book. This is definitely more on the lighter side compared to Legend. It is still a fun read. It is a Cinderella retelling. She's a cyborg. It's a bit of a sci-fi. It's set in a like futuristic version of China, and there's a really sweet romance in it as well. And then the last book that I have for this type of reader is Illuminate by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. This is the first book in the trilogy, and this book specifically involves a like plague kind of spreading across this giant spaceship where there are thousands of people and a lot of people do die. This is a little bit more intense, but this book is also really funny. A lot of terrible things are going on in this book. There's like a crazy AI. It is set in the far future, so there's like space stuff going on, but it involves 2 really funny main characters. One is like a space pilot and one is just this really badass hacker girl, and the 2 of them used to date, but they were broken up before the book starts and they are forced to kind of interact with each other again, so that's a bit of an interesting thing. But overall, this is a really funny and interesting book, but it involves a plague as well. So if you wanted a plague book, this one might be good. But those are all of the books that I wanted to recommend today. There was like a few different types of readers that I was recommending for. Obviously there was a bunch that I probably missed, so let me know if you want me to do another one of these with like different types of reader profiles, and I will do that. But I hope you enjoyed this and that you found a book that you might want to pick up while you're staying home and quarantining. But as always, please let me know down below if you have read any of these books, if you're planning to read them, which one kind of caught your interest. I would love to hear all of your thoughts. But that's about all I have to say, so thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video, and please remember that this story ain't over. Bye!